And to another episode of Flyers Files on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Kevin Durso, along with Haley Taylor Simon. This isn't where we're normally at for this.
In person, actually, for once, which is kind of nice. But we are at the Wells Fargo Center ahead of the Flyers and Rangers Black Friday annual game.
Yeah, it's not always the Rangers. Usually it has been for several years. I know it was last year. It's the same matchup, but still, it's the annual game. Everybody's used to this by this point. It's been at a few different times, honestly. It's been at one year it was at 11 a.m.
That was so weird. I don't like morning games. I like the 1 o'clock puck drop.
That's like what they do in the minor leagues with like the school day games, right? Like that 11 a.m. start. But we've got a lot to talk about this week. We've got 3 games that since we last did a show. Mm-hmm. We have 3 overtime games because this team just seems to really like giving us the extra minutes.
Oh, they do.
and so that's where we're kind of going with this one. And I think that there's an interesting tie to 3 players who I've kind of called some of the heroes of these last couple of wins that they've had that all have something in common this season. So I'm curious to see if you know where I'm going with this.
I think I'm picking up a little bit.
Okay. So I think we need to start with the player who everybody's excited to watch in a game against the Rangers. We just found out within the last hour, confirmed starting goalies. Igor Shesterkin is starting for the Rangers, which means that that's a fellow countryman on the other side for Matvei Michkov, which I think this is a big deal because it's the Rangers, it's rivalry, it's one of these types of games. This is like a game where Michkov rises to the occasion. We've seen it now with 2 game winners. He rises to the occasion.
Oh, he certainly does. And that's the exciting thing about Matvei Michkov is that he's able to finish these games, and he's exciting to watch. He set up plays, and his hockey IQ, Kevin, I have to tell you, he is so brilliant for the age that he is. I mean, I talked about this previously, but when he had that breakaway, the 2-on-1 breakaway, and he was able to pass it back to Konechny, most players don't do that. But Michkov is able to find these wins for this team. So I think going against a goalie like Shesterkin is going to be a huge thing for Matvei Michkov, especially because it is a fellow countryman to him, which is nice to see.
And he came so close to having his 3rd game winner in a very short period of time. I mean, he hit the post in overtime in Nashville. He nearly set up a couple of them twice on a power play against Vegas on Monday. They didn't end up winning that game. And then he hit the post in this shootout too. So he's close on all of these chances. Like it's something that happens for him just so naturally that he goes to he's in these areas. He's always looking for a chance to be able to win a game. And the fact that they've played so many games that have gone to the 3-on-3 now, the fact that they've given him so much space on the ice because of it, it's opening up the chances for him to get those breakaways, to get opportunities to score the game winner on a regular basis. And I think that that's something that just, it's perfect for his game and it's perfect for the excitement that surrounds him. But he's the first player I wanted to mention.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go to the guy who actually did win the game on Wednesday, Sean Couturier, because now all of a sudden, for however many games it was into the season, and we're already up to past the quarter mark, Sean Couturier had the 1 game against Minnesota where he scores the hat trick and really nothing else goal scoring wise. And it was a very long scoring drought. He's coming into this one. He's got 3 goals in his last 3 games, including the game winner on Wednesday. It's all of a sudden he's unlocking a little piece of that past from his offensive side that's making him a key contributor.
I think he needed this, though, Kevin. I really do. I think Couturier has been one of those players that people, and I mean the fans, like to criticize. However, he is such a vital part to this Philadelphia Flyers team. So for him to score that game-winning goal, I hope that installs some confidence within the captain. Because at the end of the day, you have captains on certain teams that really are playmakers and not goal scorers. And you could think of so many. But then you also have captains that are the ones getting those goals in. But that just shows you his leadership on ice. He was able to finish that play, and he was able to get that OT win. But I was actually surprised he didn't say another player.
Who was it? Who do you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say Morgan Frost.
That's the 3rd guy, because there's the common thread. Yeah. These are 3 players, and Frost got the game to overtime, obviously, so he wasn't a game-winning goal. But these are 3 players that have all shared something in common in the last several weeks, which is getting benched for a little series of time, whether it's 1 game or whether it's, in Frost's case, it was 4 or 5. And it was a lot, and now he scored in back-to-back games as well. So all of a sudden, now his game has come around a little bit since that. It's almost kind of like the same thing as last year that they talked about where, he had that kind of moment where he went to John Tortorella, talked about like kind of what cleared the air a little bit, and then all of a sudden had a really good second half as a result of it. It's happening again kind of in a way, and it's really early. It's only a couple of games that he's contributed in and he scored in and things like that, but maybe this is what unlocks something for him too. And it's a really interesting time for him in particular. He's not going to be in the same situation that Couturier is, or certainly Michkov as a rookie, where at this stage of his career, there's trade rumors going around. There's a lot of things happening around his name. So he's got to just keep doing what he does and just keep on playing. And he's doing that right now. So what have you seen over these last couple of games from him?
So it was really interesting. His first game back, you could kind of tell this was against, I believe, Chicago. He was a little bit disappointed in how he played, and he expressed that. And he says, I need to play better. Okay, against the VGK, he scores. And I'm thinking to myself, hold on. Is Morgan Frost actually doing what he said he was going to do? And then obviously he got that goal with 11 seconds left against Nashville. I am seeing a more confident Morgan Frost. I saw him on the bench chirping and laughing a little bit with Matvei Michkov, and they like each other for all worth. They do like each other and get along. But I think that this is what Morgan Frost needed. He needed that confidence. He put so much pressure on himself, and he's always been that way from his time here in Philadelphia and beforehand. He's always been one of those players that just puts this abnormal amount of pressure on himself. But again, with all those trade rumors going around, he says that he wants to be here. Every single player is going to say that, by the way. I don't think there's one player that's like, yeah, I just want to get out of here. I mean, unless like you're
Cutter Gauthier.
Yeah, well, thanks, Kevin.
I had to go.
I know. But I am seeing him more confident for us. He's taking more chances on ice. He's shooting the puck more. And for all it's worth, he could be dealt at the trade deadline. That's a very, possibility that could happen. But he needs to also show his value for what it's worth. So either way, you got to play some good hockey.
I love his instincts on the goal that he scored to tie the game because I think it's just reactionary. There's not a lot of time left. He just goes straight to the net, just breezes by the defenseman there and gets himself into a position. And that's a weird goal too because it starts from a distance. It's a double deflection in a sense. It hits off of Travis Sanheim first going in towards goal. So there's a lot of awareness that's involved with that too. So I think when he plays like that, when it's almost like he's not thinking about it in that moment, he just does what he thinks he thinks he's supposed to do. He goes to the right area and then a good thing happens. Same thing happened on his goal against Vegas where he's in the right position. He gets a deflection. It's like, the less you think about it, the more you're going to actually be able to accomplish. And I think it's interesting that you brought up how he felt after the Chicago game from the offensive side because John Tortorella said defensively he was really good. And as much as that's a calling card of his game, I think that also kind of set the foundation for maybe he was willing to take a few more chances on the offensive side. But like you get a compliment, you get something where it's like, okay, your defensive game was really good. Now do this. And I think he took it to heart.
But he's had a tough season, too, because John Tortorella also said a couple weeks ago that he was not going to coach Morgan Frost the same way that he did a few years back. So I feel like there's just been all this negativity on Frost for such a long time. And I'm happy that he is finally maybe proving the haters wrong. But again, it's not about the fans, and it is in a way, but it's about the fact that he needs to gain that from John Tortorella because you need to have your coach have trust within you to want to coach you and to want to play you.
Because it goes back to last year too. Because I think last season was the up and down toilet seat comment, right? And stuff like that. And it kind of came around like not in those terms, obviously, but it came around in the same way to start this season because you could see it like there were questions kind of coming up. He wasn't scoring, and John Tortorella kind of just straight up, we're getting close to that. Like the benching was very much coming because of the way that Tortorella was reacting. So I totally understand that. And you knew that it was kind of coming. And I just like his response to these things. Like he takes a lot for between the pressure, like you're talking about, and he takes a lot of heat, both from the fans, from his coach. There's a lot of things that go on with that. And he just keeps responding to it. And somehow or other kind of still seems to have that happy-go-lucky side to him in a way.
Yeah.
Which it's hard to do sometimes when your coach is on you about stuff and the fans get on you about stuff. And you're not the best center on the team necessarily. Like some days you are, some days you're not. The inconsistencies there. People see it all the time. And he still just goes about his business and tries to find a way to come out of this on the right side of things. And we'll see where it goes, obviously, like we talked about. But
do you think he's going to be dealt at the deadline?
I don't know about the deadline, but I keep, those types of things. And it's a tough situation because his contract is up, but he's an RFA.
Yeah.
So it's really a tough situation. It's not an easy one to kind of describe. Because of that control, I think he has value already without even going into it. But also, what do you do about this situation, especially when you know that the biggest position that you have a need for is centers, and he's a center.
And that's a good point. However, the way that I see this too is that if John Tortorella sticks around for another year coaching, hypothetically, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that Frost is actually going to want to stay here?
I don't think anybody ever wants to say that they don't want to. But like that's why he keeps saying he wants to be here. Like you said, every
He's like,
player's
I'm
going to say
happy to
that.
be in the NHL. It's such an honor to play in this league. And then he was wearing the NHL PA t-shirt the other day. I don't. Maybe I'm looking too much into this. I just really don't think he's going to be here past March.
I mean, if they were going to do something with it, they'd have to probably do it quickly because of the fact that, like, again, if he's an RFA, you only have one more year of that before he becomes a UFA. So the team control is running out.
Yep.
You have to factor all of those things in. So it definitely, I don't sense that it's not a possibility. I think there's a reason why we're talking about it in the first place, So there you go. So
just some lineup news for
we're getting the lineups
game.
right now. There was no more. Obviously, it's an afternoon game here.
Igor Zamola is scratched for the 4th time.
I mean, understandable though, because there's really what was the reason to change anything? I mean, I know they didn't play the best game in Nashville, but what was the reason to change anything, especially defensively, when that was a very defensive-minded game? A lot of guys blocking shots. They've got maybe this is a good segue anyway, because we're going into there's 2 defensemen back in the lineup since we last did a show.
Oh, Cam
York and Emil Andre are back. Emil Andre scored his first NHL goal on Monday. That was fun. He was very excited about it, obviously, as he should be. He's played well otherwise. So it was about the only thing left that he had to do was score a goal. So he finally gets his. And, I think right now those guys are playing well enough that why change anything? That they keep having, I think the hard part is that Zamula is still on the younger side and you want to kind of keep getting him in there. I think everybody can understand why Erik Johnson hasn't played since York and Andre came back. That's understandable. But
he hit the 1,000 though.
He did.
Yeah, so 1,001.
In the exact kind of area that we thought. He played one former team to get it, celebrated it against another former team,
Perfect.
a more long-time former team than, his 50 games and only 50 games
55 games actually.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. But and obviously he has even less than that in Philadelphia, so
yeah.
It is what it is. He got it, but I think it was cool that, everything happened against Colorado, the celebration, all that type of stuff. Nice. It was very fitting. I had seen some things about how Gabe Landeskog's not doing road trips right now while he's injured, but he did make that trip just because of Erik Johnson, and that's a cool thing. So these 2 guys have come back to the lineup now in York and Andre. I'm curious of your thoughts of what you've seen, because I think Andre has stepped right back into kind of what he was doing. I think for York, it's been as much as York has contributed in certain ways and made it successful. Like I think about the goal that was scored where he's setting the screen.
Yeah.
That's a very good play by him, even in a game where things are not going as well, for him otherwise. Like the same game we heard John Tortorella say, well, there was a lot of rust involved, and you could see it. So I get that. I feel like I've seen that, though, for 2 more games since he came back.
Yeah, and I think Emil Andre has stepped right in, and he has been such a light of this team. I mean, he's really stepped up since being called up here, so I am happy for Emil Andre. And there's nothing I can say that's bad about his game. Obviously, there's things you can always work on as a younger player, but at the end of the day, he's really been impressive. Cam York, on the other hand, I'm not saying that he hasn't been playing well. It's just not to the standard that I expected for him. But again, I do have to remember that he was out for an extended period of time. Sometimes players are a little bit rusty getting back into the swing of things again. But at the end of the day, he's supposed to be one of your top defensemen. He needs to play like that. And right now, players like Erasmus Ristolainen are outplaying Cam York. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is a problem.
It's a problem long term.
Long term.
I think in the short term, it's been great to see that Ristolainen stepping into this role. It's great to see that Sanheim hasn't lost anything from what was going on before just because some changes were made. There's guys who play minutes. Like Cam York plays minutes. We know Cam York plays minutes. It hasn't taken away from the minutes that Travis Sanheim has played over the last several weeks when the injuries were piling up anyway. And he still looks equally as good as he did in those games where he's stepping into this role where he looks like a number 1 right now in a way. And I don't know how sustainable that is long term, but he looks like a number 1 at this given moment. And that's what's helped you have a little bit of a better month, honestly. Like I keep coming back to like after they won the game in Nashville, they're back at 500, hockey 500 anyway, 10-10-3. It doesn't sound great on the surface, but then again, I go back to they were 1-5-1. So you go from that number. Well, then they're doing a lot better than people probably would have expected, and I think Sanheim's a big reason why.
Oh, absolutely. And Travis Sanheim, even coming into this season, you could just tell that he had a different motto about this season and a mentality. And he's been playing fantastic. I mean, he's been collectively getting the most minutes on ice as a defensive player. He's been setting up plays. I mean, he's such a big body with all of his checks and hits. Like, there's nothing bad about Travis Sanheim, honestly. I think this is maybe one of his better starts to his season. I don't want to say best season, very early, but better starts to a season, I think, is this season.
Yeah, and he's really leading your defense completely at this point. I mean, he's the guy who's out there for just about every key situation.
Right.
I think you said it best with that, where I don't notice anything that he doesn't do well. Like,
Right.
He's becoming one of these guys who he does everything well. He may not be elite in any particular category. He's definitely not an elite on the offensive side. He's not Cale Makar. He's also, from a defensive standpoint, he's not some of these other guys we've seen come in who are all offense all the time either. So he's got a little bit of both to his game. I think that's good. And it's great to see that he's doing this collectively across the board, that he's doing this over big minutes, doing this over a lot of time, and really making this happen in a way for him that it's drawing the attention nationally a little bit. I think that's important for him too, just to kind of, I think it's important in general. I think it's important for the fans to feel like they have somebody on defense that actually warrants that conversation. I feel like it's been 10 years since that's happened. I think you got to go back to me anyway. I feel like you got to go back to Kimmo Timonen was here and played on Finland all the time, Team Finland all the time. And I get it. Like, Rasmus Ristolainen is like a lock for Four Nations, because that's, I hear you. I get it. Yeah. But I'm saying I feel like to really get into that category. I mean, if we want to go back, if you really want to pick Canadian defensemen, do we have to go back to Chris Pronger being part of the team to find a player on a team that has that much talent to go and and say you possibly belong in this category?
Yeah, nobody recently I can think of.
Well, and
the only solid defenseman that they had, I mean, he was only here for one season, was Matt Niskanen.
Yeah, Matt Niskanen when he was here.
Yeah.
But even then, I think that was just, he was a solid role player. I don't feel like he ever generated
No, but not with us, but with Washington. Like,
that's
with
fair.
Other teams, but like, there hasn't been that many defensemen that have come to the Philadelphia Flyers in recent years that are like these stars.
I feel like it's a common, the part of the common topic with that is that it comes up every year at draft time, because it goes back to those drafts where when Makar got taken, or you go back to the drafts.
2017 draft will always haunt me. I just want to put that out there.
It's a conversation. We're going to talk about 2017 the way that the Boston Bruins talk about 2015.
It's awful. I think about that draft class all the time.
The 15 one or the 17?
The 17.
Okay.
It's just.
Well, yeah, because we've now talked about we've talked about
Nolan Patrick.
We've Morgan Frost was that draft.
Yeah,
too.
well, yeah, but that was.
I'm saying, but that's a player we've talked about a lot, and I think that's part of the reason is because he still qualifies as a first rounder of that draft.
Yeah.
And you think about the guys at the top of the draft, obviously, like that's the headline, but that's a secondary story.
Yeah.
Is that so?
He was the one pick that really just stayed with Philadelphia. I think Ole was in that draft too. Luxell. I believe that was 2017. Don't hold me to it. But again, when they have that second overall draft pick, and you go with Nolan Patrick and he's a bust, of course you're going to look back and think, wow, what did this team do when you have other players like a Cale Makar in that draft class? It was such Nico. Like, I could go on and on about this, Kevin.
Oh, I mean, they didn't get the luxury of being able to choose. They were going to pick between Nico Hischier and Nolan Patrick. That was what it felt like.
Yeah. And they went with the one guy that was injury prone.
The miss was the three guys that went after. That's the miss. It wasn't about. So this is welcome to pregame, by the way. See, welcome to pregame. We're testing everything out.
The horn just went off, so it's going to be set for game time.
Okay, how many times we hear that today?
Oh, that's a good question. This is going to be a high-scoring game.
You think?
Yeah, the Rangers, they actually just lost to the St. Louis Blues, a 5-2 loss.
This is part of the 4-game losing streak they're currently on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and they played horrible, which I was happy about, obviously. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a 5-goal game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be a 3-2 Philadelphia win.
Okay, that's not
overtime.
that bad. That's not as high scoring as I thought you were going to go with then. In overtime again?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why.
I'm tired of these overtime games.
Yeah, I understand. I just have a feeling when it comes to this Philadelphia Flyers team that they kind of are lackadaisical in the second frame, and it's not like a negative. Like, I feel like they just ran out of steam.
Mm-hmm.
Third period, they've been coming back with a lot of energy. So they might be down. It might be 2-1 Rangers lead heading into the final frame. Flyers might tie it up and then OT.
I'm really curious about the first 20 minutes of this game because something about these games, it's an early start. You just had a holiday. it can be one of these first periods that
do you think any of these guys really were celebrating last night? I know they like had dinner, but do you think like they were actually going to like consume that much food knowing they have a game?
I think it's a mindset thing. I don't think it actually is about that. I think it's just everybody knows that that's a day off on the schedule.
Yeah.
Like they've had a few days where they've like I think like Tuesday was not supposed to be a day off. It turned into one because they've been playing a lot of games in the month, and I get that. I just get the sense that the first period of this game, I feel like it's happened year over year sometimes too, at least from my vantage point, that year over year this game is a struggle at the start, and then there's a more frantic approach to the last half of the game. And I think that's what we're going to see here. I think you're right about the second period because it's been a problem area all season, so that's important. I'm just what I'm curious about is because I feel like the last two games, I mean, we're talking about two totally opposite performances, and they get two totally different results that you would not expect go with these games. They win a game that they do not look near as good in, basically steal 2 points in Nashville. They lose a game where they took a 3-0 lead against a team like Vegas. I'm curious about how this game starts because if they come out and they play this game against the Rangers team that has struggled, has some noise going on around it, we've heard some things. There's been stories out there about how they're looking to shake some things up with the roster. That's very interesting for a team that usually shoots for the top of the Metro right now and is very much in that win now mode, has the goalie, has a top defenseman, has a lot of good forwards, some of them missing. Peter Laviolette before the game, the coach of the New York Rangers, did say that Chris Kreider's not available and Philip Heedle's out as well. Heedle's closer, I think they said, but I loved his quote. He said, day to day, but we have a game today. So
not today.
So day to day, but not today. That's a great quote.
It is.
It's very much a Peter Laviolette quote. If we go back to his time with the Flyers too, it sounds very much like what he would say. But you are getting, I think you're right about the score a little bit because you're getting Igor Shesterkin, who has still been good by the numbers, even though the record is kind of not the standard for what we've seen over the last several years. He's 8-7-1 on the season. That's not really what we expect from Igor Shesterkin. But I think that's a reflection of a lot of what's happening in front of them. So I'm curious about the start. I want to see if they're playing, especially against a team like this, because I think the Rangers are a team that is going to try to do a lot of what Nashville did, be very aggressive on the forecheck, be very hard on pucks and trying to get to those areas. And the Flyers were great at that on Monday, but they weren't great at it on Wednesday. So I'm curious what kind of team comes out to start this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the Flyers hit the road again, and they head out to St. Louis, Missouri. So it's definitely been weird. A 5-game homestand. You have 1 game on the road. You're back home again, and then you're on the road again.
And then they're back home again next Thursday. Get a nice. I've said this before. I don't understand how this schedule works. They're playing all these games. It's a busy November, and then all of a sudden we're going to get to December 1st. They don't play until December 5th. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
No. This is the weirdest schedule I think I've ever seen in my 4 years of covering this team. It's a lot of travel, but I think that because Nashville, they were able to come home yesterday, they were able to have at least time to recover.
Spend the day with their families,
relax. But this is a big game. No matter what anybody says, this is against the New York Rangers, which I believe, I know they play the Devils in the Stadium Series, but I'm personally a believer that the Rangers are the biggest rival that this team has.
They've played an outdoor game against the Rangers.
Yeah,
so
but
it's been in there.
I know, but like this past one, people may not know the history.
And while the Rangers were in the same area, by the way, they played the next day against the Islanders. It could have been the other way around.
It should have been, honestly. That'd have been a better result. But either way, this is still a big game. People look forward to this game. The players are probably excited because, again, when you play 1 o'clock on a Friday, Kevin, it's unique. You don't get that very often. You have matinee games on the weekend. This is a weekday still. And a 1 o'clock game, so.
And it's a day everybody marks off anyway. It's the day after Thanksgiving. It's Black Friday. People are out going around doing.
We're still working.
Yeah, well, of course, we're still. Aren't we always? It feels like, especially this. That's why I said I don't know what to do with myself for a 4-day break in the middle of. I mean, I'm making up for it the following weekend. For me, that's going to be a 3 and 4 legitimately because I'm also going to Boston for the trip too.
Oh, that's a lot.
So I have to. Yeah. I'm spending my Saturday in Boston. I'm back here for the Utah game, the first ever game against the Utah Hockey Club.
It still is. That name.
It's weird to say. It sounds like a soccer thing.
I do like Clayton Keller, though, so I am excited to see him on the ice.
Clayton Keller's a fun player.
Yeah, he's a fun player.
He's one of many for that team, honestly. They've got a lot of fun players to watch.
They've been doing pretty decent. Still not doing great. I believe that they're 6th right now in the Central, but...
It was a hot start that kind of faded.
It was.
They were off to a really hot start. I felt really good. I picked them to make the playoffs. I felt really good about that until, a couple days later, about a month later.
The music came on, and the first thing I think of is Toronto Maple Leafs. Austin Matthews?
He's still not playing either.
Nope.
I think that's where we got to wrap it up, though. I think they're queuing us out. So,
Yeah.
so I think we're going to wrap it up. This has been Flyers Files, live from Wells Fargo Center. For Haley Taylor Simon, I'm Kevin Durso. Join us next week for another episode.